we ought to talk over together a very complex problem of suffering. Is that all right? Can we go into that? Why do human beings from time immemorial have suffered? And they've never solved that problem. They've never ended suffering. After thousands and thousands of years, we human beings in the modern world suffer. Suffer not having a child, suffer of not being able to fulfill, suffer when one is not loved, suffer in our loneliness. Are you ever lonely? Are you lonely ever? Huh? Are you really? Suffer when we are lonely. Suffer when we don't get rich, recognized, popular. Those are all very superficial sufferings. Wanting to be a great man and not being capable of being a great man. Wanting to manage something, not being able to manage. There are various forms like fear of sorrow. The sorrow of death of someone with whom you have lived intimately. The sorrow of death. We all know, every human being on this earth unfortunately knows the sorrow of death. And in spite of all the comforts of reincarnation, in spite of all the religious activity of their superstitions, sorrow has never ended. Sorrow is not only your sorrow, your personal sorrow, but there is the sorrow of the world. Sorrow of those people who have been killed in the war, maimed, blind, no arms and no legs, just the body, torso. And their relatives. How many mothers have cried, sisters, wives, lovers, and so on. Don't you know all this? Or are you only concerned with your own sorrow? If you are honest, we say, sorry, I'm only concerned with my own sorrow. I recognize this sorrow of others. Those people who are dying in Beirut, Nicaragua, San Salvador, in Vietnam, they are so far away. It doesn't touch us. So there is personal sorrow and the sorrow of the world. Right? It is still sorrow. Your sorrow is like the sorrow of another. Your sorrow, I won't say, it's one's sorrow when one loses one's son, wife, husband. And what a lot of fuss we make about it. Weeping, crying, wanting comfort. And there are all this sorrow of 1,000 million human beings who are suffering also like you. And this sorrow, like fear, like pleasure, is common to mankind. It's the sorrow of humanity. And that sorrow has never ended. Probably it will never end, because we have made the world so monstrous. This society which we have built, society doesn't exist by itself. We have built it through our fear, through our greed, through our selfishness and monstrous activity. This society is corrupt beyond words. We have made it because we are corrupt. And this corruption is self-interest, primarily. And so society is not going to help us. Religions have not helped mankind. They have not prevented wars. Though you talk endlessly of non-violence, peace in the world, I must have peace in my mind, all that nonsense. There's sorrow in the world. And is that, can sorrow end? Perhaps you never asked even that question. We suffer and put up with suffering. Take comfort in some religion or some doctrine or some belief. It's a strange fact, isn't it? If one loses one's wife or son or a relative, we carry that pain all our life. Don't you? You have a photo, the photo of my son on the desk. I weep quietly to myself. Or I weep publicly, which is with my friends. We never say that's the end of it. I never carry the memory of pain. It's not brutal. Put away the pain of loss in 2 or 3 days, not through years. Which doesn't mean that there is carelessness. On the contrary, this everlasting talk about one's own son or husband having died. You keep that up. It's a form of entertainment there, gossip. I'm sorry if I put it brutally. So we are asking whether sorrow can end. Not this sorrow of the world. There are going to be wars. Because human beings are violent. They cry their own son killed in a war. But your son is quite safe. So society which we have built, which each one of us have contributed to this society, to the political world, to the world of nationalities, with their divisions, that will go on. Because vast number of human beings want all that. Voting for some, well, I won't misread. So, you will say, if I end my sorrow, if that's possible, what effect has that on the rest of the world? Right? It's like asking, if I free myself from all the trivialities of life, all the pain and the anxiety, the loneliness and the sorrow of my life, I want to cry for you. Because all this is to you meaningless. You will ask yourself, if I free myself from sorrow, what will affect the world? Will the world change because I changed? That's a wrong question. Because when you ask such question, you are finding an excuse not to change. That becomes an easy way out from your own change. And you say, well, it doesn't matter if I change or not, because we're all like that. And I must live in this world. So I listen to you. Sounds good. But I'll carry on my own way. So, asking a question of what will, if I change, will the world change? That's a totally wrong question. Then you are looking for a reward and punishment. If you radically change, you will find out whether it has an effect on the world or not. Hitler, with his madness, has changed the world. Napoleon and all the great heroes of war, heroes of murders, have changed the world. So as the Buddha, and so on. They were individual, they were separate. They said, this is what I want to do, and did it brutally off. So, if you really end sorrow, not verbally, but actually be free of sorrow, then there is a passion which consumes you for the rest of your life. So it's important to understand whether it's possible to end sorrow. Your sorrow, one's sorrow. Is sorrow self-pity? Please examine what the speaker is saying. The speaker is telling his friend sitting on the bench, and he's talking about sorrow. And the speaker asks him, Kay asks him, have you ever asked the question whether you can end sorrow, your sorrow? He says, I've never even thought of such a question. Because all my life I've lived with sorrow. And when you put that question, whether you can end sorrow, I really don't know. I don't know what to do with it. I've tried 10 different ways, and I still go on suffering. And Kay is asking him, have you ever asked the question whether sorrow can ever end? He said, no, I've never asked it. And he said, now ask it. How you ask it is important. Whether you're asking it casually or asking it as an escape, or are you seeking a comfort with the ending of sorrow? Or are you putting the question free from reward and punishment? Ending sorrow, not saying to yourself, if I end this, I'll get that. If I end sorrow, I'll have peace. I'll have happiness. I'll have joy. That's mere exchange. It's not the ending of sorrow. So, chaos, the friend, is it self-interest, self-pity? That when you suffer, is it self-pity? He says partly, yes. Is it the loss of someone who has given you comfort, who has given you pleasure sexually or in different forms of pleasure? He said, yes, partly. Is it that you find yourself lonely because you have lent on that person, been with that person for years, got used to her or him or it? It may be furniture which you have cherished, polished it. An old piece, 13th century furniture. And then you get attached to it. And when that is taken away, you get upset. Is it that kind of suffering you have? You have treated her or him like a piece of furniture, got used to him. You understand? Put all these questions. Don't just go to sleep. Says the friend says, yes, all these parts of all this. Primarily, I am lonely. Aren't you lonely? And what is loneliness? I'm attached to you as an audience. And the speaker, if he's attached to an audience, small or big, then the audience disappears, he's going to be lonely. He's going to lose his fame, his notoriety. You're going to lose the image you have built about him. Right? That's right. So, similarly, when you are attached to something, which is another form of self-interest, attached to a person, to an idea, to a concept, to a symbol, to a myth. Then when that attachment is torn away from you, you become lonely, depressed, anxious, nervous, break down. So, when you see K is telling his friend, when you know all this, which is part of suffering, which is the essence of suffering, suffering is not from you as though you were suffering and suffering was something different. You are the entity that is suffering. You are suffering. You understand the difference? Not that I am suffering. The I is suffering. You understand? Like anger, envy is not different from you. You are envy. You are anger. You are violent. And you may say, I'm trying to be non-violent. That too is you. You are not different from the qualities, from the expression. But you are that. So suffering is not separate from you. So the K says to his friend, first thing when you suffer, don't escape from it. Don't seek comfort in any form. And friends, that's much too difficult. Not to seek some comfort, some consolation, some way to relieve myself from the ache and the pain. Then you are escaping from the fact. And we have cultivated 1,000 escapes. It's part of our life. So, K says to his friend, who is you, says, don't escape. That's the first thing to realize. if you escape to something, that something will also, you will lose. And then they begin again. You understand? So don't ever escape. See the fact of the truth of it, the implications of escaping. Then, if you don't escape, don't try to find out the cause of suffering. Because that again is a process of analysis, right? Which is the operation of thought, time. Don't do any of that. But Kay says to his friend, which is you, remain with sorrow. As you want to remain with pleasure, don't you? So remain with sorrow. Don't ever move from sorrow. That is, don't let thought interfere with that thing you call sorrow. Sorrow is a great shock to not only to the physical organism, but also a great shock to the psyche. And to remain with that shock. Never trying to transcend it. All that would be the activity of thought. You understand what? It's like having a marvelous jewel in your hand. The more you look at it, the more the beauty of that jewel is revealed. Similarly, if you hold sorrow, never move away from it, then you will see how immense it is, not just sorrow, the pain and the anxiety, but in that observation of sorrow, passion comes. Not the passion of lust or all that, but passion. Do you know what passion is? No, you don't. Because without passion, you cannot create anything. You cannot love without passion. Don't translate it into sexual passion. Lust. Passion is important. Without passion, life becomes shallow. And therefore, that which is shallow has no beauty, no love, no passion. I'm sorry if I've kept you more.